When automating VAT determination within an ERP system, one of the main decisions a company will need to make is whether to implement an add-on or a tax engine. While both of these solutions can manage complex VAT determination within an ERP system, when it comes to their functionality, flexibility, and their technical implementation efforts, they can vary significantly. My name is John Dingle, and I'm very happy to be joined here today with Christian Odendahl from VAT Consulting. Christian, VAT specialises in the implementation of VAT processes, add-ons, tax engines, and e-invoicing solutions. I know you have a lot of experience in this area. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. So VAT is a small tax technology boutique focusing on supporting clients with setting up indirect tax requirements in their processes and systems. So I did my fair share of implementation projects in for SAP in SAP Native, the add-on solutions, or tax engines. So I'm happy to speak a little bit more about the experience I made.
So today we're going to talk about add-ons and tax engines. From an architectural perspective, what are the differences between those two solutions?
So an add-on solution is basically the improvement of standard SAP's tax determination functionalities. It's seamlessly integrated into the processes and uses standard SAP information and parameters to come up with a tax determination, so a tax code. A tax engine is basically a product that was invented in the US. The reason is that in the US you have this jurisdictional taxes. So the tax rate consists of different levels of taxes. It's the federal, the state, the county, and sometimes the city level that all make up the sales and use tax rate that's applicable in a certain area. This means you can, in the US, you have more than 15,000 different tax rates across the country. And this cannot be handled manually. So this is why tax engines were invented to basically outsource these changes to a vendor who is taking care of updating all the changes regularly. Now, a tax engine is a separate application. So if you speak about architecture, it needs to be connected via interfaces to your applications where you need to have the taxes determined. So the tax engines are not limited to SAP. You can connect them to all of the usual ERP systems that companies are using, from middle market to big companies. And you can even connect them to other applications like web shops to run the tax determination. So this is a huge difference, saying in architectural.
So if I understand that correctly, an add-on is an embedded solution. It sits within the core of your ERP system, whereas a tax engine is an external solution. It can sit, for example, up in the cloud. There might be API connections connecting the tax engine to your ERP system, passing data between the tax engine and your ERP system. So from an architecture perspective, they're quite different. But when it comes to implementing these solutions, what's the additional implementation effort, or are there differences there? I could imagine when working or implementing with a tax engine, you need to involve the API management team a lot more. Would that be right?
Obviously, it's the nature of the tax engine that it needs to be connected. And I think when it comes to implementation and implementing a solution, for the main processes, the implementation effort might be similar when you speak about tax evaluation for sales and purchase processes. But yeah, obviously you need to have an interface, and an add-on solution like Meridians is focusing on SAP, whereas the tax engine can be connected to various applications, and this is definitely something where you need to work a little bit more on connecting these, depending if there is a standard connector available or if you need to build one on your own.
Yeah. I suppose when thinking about it, what would also be very important for companies to consider is the experience of the users. So I'd be thinking specifically about the order management team or the AP clerks that are working within the ERP system, and also perhaps about the users that might need to maintain these solutions between a tax engine and an add-on. Would there be any differences, for example, with the end user working in the ERP system or with the actual users who are maintaining these systems, maintaining these solutions?
So for the end user, who is the end user? It's usually is the people in sales that are capturing the sales orders and doing the billing, or the accounting team that's processing purchase invoices. For them, there is no real difference. It's not visual whether the text code comes in via standard SAP, the add-on, or a tax engine. So they don't see any differences. But obviously, there is a difference in after go live maintenance support, which is needed, and it's natural. I explained in the beginning that the tax engines were invented because in the US it's not really possible for every company to manually do the changes or keep up with the changes of the tax rates. So this is basically outsourcing the content, so tax rates, place of supply rules, and other VAT relevant information that's sitting in the tax engine itself. Whereas in the add-on solution, the users need to maintain those changes. So say a tax rate changes by themselves in the system. So they need to do it themselves. And this is usually one selling point, right? So you outsource your tax monitoring to a vendor, and you will always be up to date. On the downside of this, you have someone on a monthly basis updating your tax determination. So and the reason why I'm saying it is because in VAT, we do not always have black and white. Sometimes you have the rights to choose how you want to treat a specific transaction. And you can make choices which come from your VAT planning concept. Now, the changes that come in on a monthly basis might change your configuration. So either because the content was updated or new functionality was introduced. So you need to be up to speed and understand which changes coming on a monthly basis. So this might not only play a crucial role whenever we know we want to actively do a change in the add-on. For tax engines, you need to set up a specific process to monitor this.
Yeah. And I think, from my experience working within tax technology, one of the main questions that I find companies asking themselves when they're considering implementing a tax determination solution is whether to go with a global tax solution, kind of a one-stop shop, or whether to go with a hybrid approach where, depending on the jurisdiction or the region, they will implement a tax engine or an add-on. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, of course, this is a very common question or topic to be discussed during a vendor selection. So before you actually start implementing a project. And usually the IT of the clients, they prefer to have one global solution. It's much easier. It might limit the total cost of ownership and the maintenance processes and everything you have. From my experience, this is not always the best way to go. So I'm personally believing that you should look into the complexity of your transactions, the scope of the countries where you're dealing with, and then you need to decide which is the best solution. So in the US, you cannot go without a tax engine actually. In Europe, you might be best off with an add-on solution. In other countries, you might need to decide for a local champion solution, which might be small but very effective because it's focusing only on this one country, like in Brazil, for example. So discussion is always to be held, and the IT's position is usually what you mentioned, having one global solution.
That's some very good advice. And I suppose before we wrap up, because you mentioned the IT function, I suppose the implementation of a tax determination solution really has two sides of a coin, right? So you've got the IT function, but then you also have the indirect tax and finance teams. If you were speaking to an indirect tax manager who was considering implementing a tax determination solution, what considerations would you perhaps think that they should have in the front of their mind, whether talking internally to their IT function or looking into the market for an actual tax determination solution itself?
Yeah. So what your question aims for? How can I find the best solution for my company? And I think it's a team effort, right? So you need to involve IT people as well as business and operating people when it comes to selecting the solution.
Yeah.
That would be my advice, to involve all the stakeholders from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So that the best solution can be identified.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. Thank you for joining us today, Christian. If you or your company are considering implementing a tax determination solution, please feel free to reach out to us on our website, meridianglobalservices.com, or indeed our partner's website, heyvat.de. Thank you.